Do you remember those Tim Hortons treats that seemed to vanish almost as quickly as you spotted them in the display case? The ones you could only find for a fleeting moment, yet left a lasting mark on your mornings, lunch breaks, and snack cravings. They weren't just food, they were little rituals, tiny joys that made coffee runs feel like a special occasion. Today, we're taking a trip down memory lane to revisit 21 vanished Tim Hortons items that only true Canadians remember. Before pumpkin spice, there was Dutchie time. Long before pumpkin spice lattes and cinnamon-infused everything became a fall ritual, Canadians were quietly savoring a different kind of seasonal indulgence: the Dutchie donut. It wasn't flashy, and it certainly didn't need hashtags or influencer endorsements to earn its place in hearts across the country. With its soft, square shape, sugary glaze, and subtle chewiness, the Dutchie offered a little moment of sweetness in an otherwise ordinary day. It was the kind of treat you could grab on your way to work, slip into a lunchbox for a school snack, or pair with a steaming cup of coffee on a slow Sunday morning, and it never failed to bring a smile. The Dutchie wasn't just a donut, it was a ritual. Introduced in the early days of Tim Hortons, it reflected a simpler era of Canadian tastes, one where convenience met comfort and indulgence didn't have to be extravagant. The dough itself was tender and slightly sweet, offering a satisfying bite that wasn't overly heavy or rich. The glaze added a shiny coating that caught the light and the eye, inviting a quick, almost ceremonial pause to enjoy its perfect simplicity. For many, the Dutchie was less about the sugar and more about the memory it carried. Childhood mornings with a parent at the local Tim Hortons, a mid-afternoon pick-me-up during a long school day, or the comforting familiarity of a treat that rarely failed to deliver. In a way, the Dutchie was quietly versatile. Its mild sweetness made it suitable for breakfast, a snack, or a little dessert after lunch. Unlike the more decadent pastries of today, it didn't overwhelm the palate. Instead, it complemented it. Its understated flavor allowed the accompanying coffee to shine, creating a balance that modern sweet confections often miss. Canadians didn't need fancy toppings or seasonal hype to enjoy it. It was just right as it was, reliable and comforting. A dependable small joy in an ever-changing world. As trends shifted and pumpkin spice mania swept the nation, the Dutchie gradually receded from the spotlight, making room for trendier, flashier creations. Yet its legacy remains, preserved in the memories of those who grew up with it, and in the nostalgic stories shared by older generations. It stands as a reminder that some of the simplest pleasures, soft dough, a dusting of sugar, and a hint of warmth, can leave the most lasting impressions. Before the seasonal hype and ever-changing flavors, there was Dutchie time, a quiet testament to comfort, consistency, and the timeless charm of a humble donut. The Dutchie donut. Long before Instagrammable pastries and artisanal donuts dominated cafe counters, the Dutchie donut held a special place in the hearts of Canadians. With its soft, square shape, lightly sweet dough, and shiny sugar glaze. It was a simple treat that managed to feel both comforting and a little indulgent. Introduced in the early days of Tim Hortons, the Dutchie was the kind of donut that didn't need flashy marketing or seasonal hype to earn a loyal following. It was reliable, familiar, and perfectly suited to the everyday rhythms of Canadian life. From a quick coffee break on a busy morning to a nostalgic snack after school. The beauty of the Dutchie lay in its simplicity. The dough was tender yet substantial, slightly sweet without being overpowering, and the glaze added just enough shine and sugar to make it feel special. Unlike more decadent or heavily frosted donuts, the Dutchie offered a balance. It was sweet, yes, but approachable. Its texture and flavor created a quiet pleasure, the kind that made you slow down for a moment, take a sip of coffee, and enjoy a small, satisfying indulgence. For many Canadians, it evoked the comfort of routine, a snack that never failed to deliver consistency in a world that was constantly changing. Over the years, the Dutchie became more than just a donut. It became a symbol of shared experience. Children would press their noses against the glass display cases, pointing eagerly at the neatly stacked squares, while parents grabbed a few for themselves, too. Office workers relied on it as a quick, dependable morning boost, and friends met over coffee to share a Dutchie or two, catching up amid the hum of everyday life. Its presence was unpretentious, yet somehow it carried a quiet elegance, proving that a humble, well-made pastry could offer as much joy as more elaborate treats. Despite its popularity, the Dutchie gradually disappeared from the Tim Hortons menu, replaced by trendier, more visually striking options. Still, for those who remember it, the Dutchie retains a special nostalgic charm. It represents a time when donuts were simple, dependable, and comforting. A little pause in the day that required no explanation. The Dutchie donut may no longer line the shelves, but in memory it remains. A sweet, square emblem of Canadian mornings, childhood treats, and the timeless appeal of understated comfort. The blueberry fritter. Long before gourmet bakeries began crafting fruit-filled creations with artisan flair, the blueberry fritter was a cornerstone of the Tim Hortons pastry case. Beloved for its perfect balance of sweetness, texture, and fruit-forward flavor. This golden, irregularly shaped treat was a testament to the idea that indulgence didn't need to be complicated. Its crispy, slightly caramelized exterior gave way to a tender, moist interior, packed with pockets of juicy blueberries. Each bite offering a burst of natural tartness, tempered by the gentle sweetness of the dough. For many Canadians, the blueberry fritter wasn't just a donut. It was a small daily celebration, a reliable treat that transformed a coffee break into a moment worth savoring. Introduced in the 1970s, the blueberry fritter reflected Tim Hortons' early commitment to providing comfort foods that felt substantial and satisfying. Unlike simple ring donuts or cream-filled pastries, the fritter carried heft, both in texture and flavor. Its irregular shape hinted at a handcrafted charm, a reminder that not everything needed to be perfectly uniform to be enjoyable. The blueberries were the stars of the show, providing bursts of color and flavor that contrasted with the golden dough. A subtle glaze added shine and sweetness, ensuring that every bite had a pleasing balance between fruity tang and sugary warmth. Canadians embraced the fritter not just for its taste, but for the memories it evoked. It was a breakfast companion on the way to school, a mid-morning indulgence at the office, and an after-school reward for kids. Its presence in the display case offered a comforting constancy. No matter the day, the season, or the year, the blueberry fritter remained a dependable treat. There was a quiet joy in breaking off a piece, watching the juice of the berries mingle with the dough, and knowing that something so simple could bring such satisfaction. Over time, the blueberry fritter slowly disappeared from most locations, overshadowed by trendier donuts, muffins, and specialty items designed for visual impact and Instagram appeal. Yet for those who remember it, the fritter retains a nostalgic charm that transcends its humble ingredients. It represents a period when pastries were crafted for taste and comfort, not just presentation. The blueberry fritter may no longer sit in the display case, but in the memories of Canadians, it endures. A sweet, golden reminder of mornings with coffee, afternoons with friends, and the simple pleasure of a perfectly balanced, fruit-filled treat. The Walnut Crunch. Before decadent, over-the-top dessert trends dominated bakery shelves, the Walnut Crunch held a quiet, steadfast place in the Tim Hortons lineup. It was a donut that combined the warmth of toasted nuts with the simple pleasure of a sweet, airy dough, offering a textural contrast that made every bite interesting. The golden base was soft and tender, while the topping, a careful scattering of chopped walnuts bound by a thin glaze, added a satisfying crunch and nutty richness that elevated an otherwise humble treat. For many Canadians, the Walnut Crunch was more than just a pastry. It was a comforting companion to morning coffee, a reliable indulgence that never tried too hard, yet delivered consistently. Introduced during the 1980s, the Walnut Crunch reflected Tim Hortons' approach to combining classic flavors with approachable textures. Unlike cream-filled donuts or elaborate iced creations, it relied on simplicity, dough, nuts, and a touch of glaze. The walnuts were toasted just enough to release their aroma, adding depth and a subtle buttery note that complemented the sweetness of the dough. Each bite carried a balance of soft interior and crisp topping, a play on textures that made the Walnut Crunch stand out among the more uniform donuts. Its charm lay in its restraint. It was indulgent without feeling heavy, flavorful without being overwhelming. For Canadians, the Walnut Crunch represented familiarity and understated pleasure. It was a breakfast treat for those who appreciated tradition and consistency over novelty. Office workers might have grabbed one alongside their morning coffee. Students savored it as a mid-morning snack, and families often picked it up on weekend outings. There was a subtle satisfaction in its predictable perfection. Each Walnut Crunch tasted as it should, providing a gentle reminder that some things didn't need reinvention to be enjoyed. It carried a homely, reassuring quality, a little sweet moment in an otherwise hectic day. Over time, however, the Walnut Crunch slowly faded from the Tim Hortons menu, displaced by more modern donuts, muffins, and specialty items designed for eye-catching appeal. Yet for those who remember it, the Walnut Crunch lives on in memory as a symbol of simpler times, when pastries focused on flavor, texture, and comfort rather than spectacle. Its combination of soft dough and nutty crunch remains a nostalgic favorite, evoking mornings with coffee in hand, shared treats with friends, and the quiet joy of a donut that delivered exactly what it promised. In the collective memory of Canadians, the Walnut Crunch is a timeless reminder that sometimes simplicity is the sweetest indulgence. The Blueberry Bran Muffin. Long before the era of Instagram-worthy superfoods and trendy health bowls, Tim Hortons quietly offered a muffin that balanced nutrition with everyday enjoyment. The Blueberry Bran Muffin. It wasn't flashy, it didn't boast layers of icing or a dramatic crumble topping, but it carried its own understated charm. Packed with wholesome bran and dotted with plump sweet tart blueberries, it offered a hearty, fiber-rich breakfast or snack that felt sensible without being boring. Each bite provided a subtle nutty warmth from the bran and a juicy burst from the berries, creating a simple but satisfying rhythm of flavors and textures that became a comforting ritual for many Canadians. Introduced in the late 1980s, the Blueberry Bran Muffin reflected Tim Hortons' early efforts to cater to a more health-conscious audience while keeping their offerings convenient and approachable. Unlike pastries that leaned heavily on sugar and butter, this muffin promised a touch of virtue in every bite. The batter was lightly sweetened, allowing the natural flavor of the blueberries to shine, while the bran lent a wholesome rustic texture that felt almost homemade. It was easy to eat on the go, yet substantial enough to feel like a real, nourishing breakfast. Its charm was in its balance: modest, satisfying, and practical without ever feeling austere. For Canadians, the Blueberry Bran Muffin became more than just a grab-and-go option. It fit seamlessly into the rhythm of daily life. Students grabbed one before class, parents packed them in lunchboxes, and office workers paired it with their morning coffee as a reliable start to the day. There was an unspoken pleasure in knowing that this muffin could be both convenient and a little nurturing. A small comfort amid the chaos of early mornings. Its familiarity made it a quiet favorite, a reminder that health and indulgence didn't always need to be mutually exclusive. Over time, as tastes and trends evolved, the Blueberry Bran Muffin was gradually phased out in favor of sweeter, trendier, or more visually striking options. Yet its memory lingers among those who remember the subtle joys of a simple, thoughtfully made muffin. It evokes early mornings, the smell of freshly baked goods, and the small satisfaction of a breakfast that was both filling and wholesome. Today, the Blueberry Bran Muffin stands as a nostalgic emblem of Tim Hortons' era of approachable, everyday nutrition. A reminder that sometimes the quietest offerings leave the most lasting impressions. The Raspberry Stick. Before artisanal pastries and berry-filled desserts became cafe staples, Tim Hortons quietly offered a simple, satisfying treat that brought a touch of fruit-filled joy to the everyday coffee run. The Raspberry Stick. Sleek, elongated, and coated in a thin glaze, it wasn't a towering pastry or a decadent confection, but it carried a sweet, approachable charm that made it instantly recognizable. Inside, a delicate ribbon of raspberry jam provided just the right balance of tartness and sweetness, while the soft, airy dough offered a comforting bite that paired perfectly with a morning coffee or an afternoon pick-me-up. It was the kind of pastry that felt both familiar and special, a small indulgence without pretense, a reminder that sweetness could be simple. Introduced in the late 1980s and popular through the 1990s, the raspberry stick reflected Tim Hortons' focus on approachable, convenient pastries that could brighten any routine. Unlike more complex desserts, it relied on a few well-chosen ingredients: soft yeast dough, a smear of fruit preserves, and a thin sugar glaze. The simplicity was its strength. Each bite was a harmonious combination of soft breadiness and fruity brightness. Easy to eat on the go, yet satisfying enough to feel like a treat. It was practical for commuters, students, and busy parents, yet comforting enough to evoke memories of homemade jam-filled pastries from home kitchens. For many Canadians, the raspberry stick was a small but reliable pleasure. It was the pastry you could grab on a school run, enjoy during a coffee break, or slip into a lunchbox without worry. Its presence behind the glass case brought a quiet sense of anticipation. Simple yet cheerful, modest yet memorable. There was an unspoken charm in its understated elegance. A reminder that a touch of fruit and a light glaze could turn a routine snack into something that felt thoughtful and enjoyable. As trends shifted toward fancier, more indulgent pastries, the raspberry stick gradually disappeared from Tim Hortons menus. While newer options offered cream-filled or heavily decorated alternatives, this modest, fruit-filled favorite quietly faded, leaving behind fond memories rather than glossy Instagram photos. Today, the raspberry stick endures in the minds of those who remember it, a nostalgic emblem of a time when Tim Hortons' pastries balanced convenience, flavor, and simplicity. It remains a reminder that even the humblest of treats can leave a lasting impression, a little stick of joy that made everyday moments feel just a bit sweeter. The cinnamon twist. Long before cinnamon-flavored pastries were a ubiquitous part of every cafe display, Tim Hortons quietly offered a simple delight that managed to be both comforting and nostalgic: the cinnamon twist. This modest pastry wasn't flashy or extravagant, but its soft, twisted dough, dusted generously with cinnamon sugar, had a way of turning an ordinary coffee run into a small celebration. Each bite delivered a warm, sweet aroma that seemed to linger in the air, inviting passers-by to pause and savor a moment of everyday indulgence. It was the kind of treat that felt familiar, yet special. A sweet twist on routine, literally and figuratively. Introduced in the late 1980s and popular throughout the 1990s, the cinnamon twist embodied Tim Hortons' approach to pastries. Simple ingredients, approachable flavors, and an emphasis on comfort. The dough was soft but sturdy enough to hold the twist, while the cinnamon sugar provided both a gentle sweetness and that unmistakable, slightly spicy aroma that made it feel like home. Unlike richer, cream-filled pastries, the cinnamon twist relied on its textures and scents to create satisfaction, with each bite offering a balance of soft dough and sugary crunch. Its simplicity made it perfect for busy mornings or a quick afternoon pick-me-up, while still feeling indulgent enough to brighten an ordinary day. For Canadians, the cinnamon twist carried a subtle charm. It was a pastry that didn't demand attention, yet once tasted, it lingered in memory. Parents could grab one for the kids' snack, students could enjoy it on the go, and office workers could pair it with coffee as a mid-morning comfort. There was a rhythm to eating a cinnamon twist, breaking off a piece, feeling the sugar crystals clinging to fingertips, and savoring the warm, fragrant dough. It wasn't just a pastry. It was a small, tangible moment of pleasure in the midst of busy routines. As Tim Hortons introduced fancier, trendier options, cream-filled donuts, fruit-topped pastries, and layered desserts, the cinnamon twist gradually disappeared from shelves. Its quiet appeal couldn't compete with the visual drama of newer offerings. Yet those who remember it carry a deep nostalgia for its warm, cinnamon-scented simplicity. Today, the cinnamon twist lives on in memory as a quintessential Tim Hortons treat, unpretentious, comforting, and perfectly sweet in its understated way. It's a reminder that sometimes, the simplest pleasures are the ones that linger the longest. The blueberry iced donut. Long before every cafe and bakery seemed to have a line of Instagram-worthy blueberry treats, Tim Hortons quietly offered a simple indulgence that balanced sweetness and nostalgia. The blueberry iced donut. This modest pastry combined a soft golden donut base, studded with real blueberries, and topped with a smooth pale glaze that gleamed under the display lights. It wasn't flashy or overly ornate, yet there was something irresistible about its tender crumb and the occasional burst of tart berry juice. Each bite offered a delicate balance of sweet and fruity, a small reminder that even everyday treats could carry a touch of joy. Introduced in the late 1980s and popular through the 1990s, the blueberry iced donut reflected Tim Hortons' knack for offering comforting, approachable pastries without overcomplicating the flavor. The donut itself was soft and slightly chewy, lightly sweetened, and dotted with juicy blueberries that added texture and subtle tang. The glaze, thin and glossy, provided just enough sweetness to complement the berries without overwhelming them. Unlike cream-filled or chocolate-topped donuts, this one relied on its freshness, balance, and natural fruitiness to shine. It was the kind of pastry that paired perfectly with a morning coffee or an afternoon tea, offering a quietly satisfying treat that never felt excessive. For many Canadians, the blueberry iced donut carried a sense of simple indulgence. Kids would spot it in the display case and beg for it as a weekend treat, while adults enjoyed its approachable flavor as a small daily pleasure. There was something comforting about the donut's consistency. The same tender crumb, the same sweet glaze, the occasional blueberry popping through, that made it reliable in a way that felt almost homey. It wasn't a pastry meant to impress. It was meant to be enjoyed, to brighten an ordinary day with minimal fuss and maximum satisfaction. Over time, the blueberry iced donut gradually vanished from Tim Hortons' core menu, replaced by newer, trendier offerings that lean toward cream fillings, elaborate toppings, and seasonal flavors. Yet for those who remember it, the donut remains an emblem of nostalgic simplicity. Sweet, but not overwhelming, comforting, but never bland. a small yet memorable part of the Canadian breakfast experience. It's a quiet reminder that sometimes the most enduring treats are the ones that feel familiar, reliable, and just a little bit special. The mixed berry smoothie. Long before the smoothie craze took over Canadian fast food menus and Instagram feeds, Tim Hortons quietly offered a refreshing, fruity option that felt both wholesome and indulgent: the mixed berry smoothie. It wasn't flashy, with no elaborate toppings or kale disguises, but its vibrant hue and thick, creamy texture made it stand out among the coffee and donut lineup. The smoothie combined a medley of berries, strawberries, blueberries, and raspberries, blended with yogurt or a milk base to create a drink that was sweet, tart, and perfectly balanced. Each sip offered a burst of flavor, a chilled reminder that breakfast or a mid-morning snack could be both convenient and satisfying. Introduced in the late 1990s, the mixed berry smoothie was part of Tim Hortons' early attempts to appeal to health-conscious customers while maintaining their fast service convenience. The berries were often frozen, providing a natural sweetness and tang, while the yogurt or milk added creaminess and body. Unlike heavily processed shakes or sugar-laden drinks, this smoothie had a freshness that was both approachable and reassuring. It was a simple combination, but that simplicity was its strength. The bright fruit flavors were allowed to shine, and the smooth texture made it easy to drink on the go, whether heading to class, the office, or a weekend errand run. For many Canadians, the mixed berry smoothie represented a small modern indulgence that still carried the reliability Tim Hortons was known for. Students appreciated its portability and lightness. Office workers liked the refreshing break from their usual coffee, and parents found it to be a wholesome option for kids. There was something inherently comforting in the smoothie's consistency. The predictable sweetness, the vibrant color, and the occasional tangy bite of frozen berries that reminded you it was made from real ingredients. It was a treat that felt just a little virtuous while still enjoyable, a balance not easily achieved in the world of fast food beverages. Eventually, the mixed berry smoothie faded from the menu, replaced by newer smoothies, iced beverages, and seasonal creations that reflected evolving trends and marketing strategies. Yet for those who remember it, the smoothie remains a nostalgic emblem of a time when Tim Hortons quietly offered a fruity, refreshing option alongside their iconic donuts and coffee. It's a reminder that sometimes the simplest combinations, berries, yogurt, a touch of sweetness, can create lasting memories, sip by sip, in the daily rhythm of Canadian life. The chicken salad sandwich. Long before artisanal sandwiches and gourmet meal kits became the norm, Tim Hortons quietly offered a practical yet satisfying option for lunchgoers: the chicken salad sandwich. It wasn't flashy or trendy, but it had a steady charm that made it a reliable choice for Canadians seeking a lighter meal. The sandwich featured tender chunks of chicken mixed with a creamy, slightly tangy dressing, often accented with crisp celery or a hint of onion, all nestled between two slices of soft white bread. Each bite was a balance of flavor and texture: creamy, slightly crunchy, and pleasantly savory, perfectly complementing a coffee or a simple juice on the side. Introduced in the 1980s, the chicken salad sandwich reflected Tim Hortons' efforts to expand their menu beyond pastries and coffee, offering something that felt wholesome without sacrificing convenience. The chicken was pre-cooked and shredded, ensuring a uniform, easy-to-eat filling. while the dressing added moisture and a subtle tang that brightened the flavors. Lettuce or other simple garnishes were sometimes included, providing a refreshing crunch that kept the sandwich from feeling heavy or one-dimensional. Unlike fast food burgers or fried options, this sandwich had a lightness that made it suitable for lunch breaks, school trips, or even a quick snack on the go. For many Canadians, the chicken salad sandwich represented practicality and comfort in one neat package. Office workers could grab it between meetings, students found it a manageable lunch to carry to class, and parents appreciated a meal that was familiar yet satisfying for their kids. Its appeal lay in its consistency. Every sandwich tasted reliably the same, with the creamy chicken salad and soft bread delivering the predictable satisfaction of a classic deli sandwich. It was uncomplicated, dependable, and a quiet alternative to the sweet treats that dominated most of the counter space. Over time, however, the chicken salad sandwich gradually disappeared from Tim Hortons' lineup, replaced by trendier sandwiches, wraps, and seasonal items that catered to evolving tastes and marketing strategies. Yet for those who remember it, the sandwich evokes a sense of nostalgia, a reminder of a time when quick service meals could be both practical and comforting. Its absence leaves a quiet void in the menu, a gentle reminder that some of the simplest, most reliable options can be the most memorable. The chicken salad sandwich endures in memory as a humble emblem of everyday Canadian life, offering a taste of practicality, comfort, and quiet satisfaction with every bite. The chili in a bread bowl. Long before fancy cafes and Instagram-friendly meals became the norm, Tim Hortons quietly served a hearty comfort classic, the chili in a bread bowl. It wasn't just food, it was a meal that felt like a warm hug on a cold Canadian day. Imagine a round, crusty loaf hollowed out and filled to the brim with thick, savory chili, rich with ground beef, beans, tomatoes, and a blend of spices that hit just the right balance between hearty and comforting. The bread itself soaked up the flavors, becoming soft at the center while keeping its chewy, sturdy crust intact, a perfect edible vessel for every spoonful. This was the kind of meal that could fill you up, soothe the soul, and make a quick lunch or dinner feel like a little celebration. Introduced in the 1980s, the chili in a bread bowl reflected Tim Hortons' knack for providing convenient, satisfying meals that felt homemade. The chili was prepared in large batches, simmered to develop a rich, savory flavor that was both familiar and satisfying, appealing to families, students, and office workers alike. The bread, baked fresh or sourced daily from local suppliers, provided the ideal balance, sturdy enough to hold the hearty chili without collapsing, yet soft enough to scoop up every last bite. It was practical, filling, and indulgent in a way that sweet pastries or sandwiches could never achieve. For many Canadians, this dish represented more than just a meal. It was a cozy ritual. Students could enjoy it on campus during lunch breaks. Parents might grab it for a quick midweek dinner, and anyone facing a chilly commute could find comfort in the warmth of the chili-filled loaf. There was an unspoken satisfaction in breaking through the crust, dipping your spoon into the steaming, aromatic chili, and savoring a bite that combined bread and stew in perfect harmony. It was reliable, generous, and deeply comforting, an everyday indulgence that felt special in its simplicity. Over time, the chili in a bread bowl gradually disappeared from most Tim Hortons locations, replaced by soups, sandwiches, and trendier menu items. Perhaps it was too bulky for the grab-and-go model, or maybe it belonged to a slower, more deliberate era of quick-service dining. Regardless, those who remember it still speak of it with fond nostalgia. The chili in a bread bowl remains a beloved memory, a meal that offered warmth, fullness, and a little taste of home. It's a reminder that sometimes the simplest, heartiest dishes leave the most lasting impression long after they vanish from the menu. The egg salad sandwich. Long before artisanal sandwiches and Instagram-worthy brunches dominated Canadian cafe menus, Tim Hortons quietly offered a humble classic, the egg salad sandwich. Simple, unassuming, and utterly satisfying, it was the kind of lunchtime staple that carried a quiet reliability. Soft, white sandwich bread cradled a creamy, tangy filling made from perfectly boiled eggs. A touch of mayonnaise, a hint of mustard, and a sprinkle of seasoning, enough to bring the flavors together without overpowering the palate. It wasn't flashy, it didn't promise adventure, but it delivered exactly what it promised. A familiar, comforting bite that felt like home in every forkful. For anyone navigating busy mornings, packed school lunches, or a quick office break, it was a trustworthy option, modest yet hearty enough to fill the midday hunger gap. Introduced in the 1970s and 1980s, the egg salad sandwich reflected Tim Hortons' dedication to approachable, ready-to-eat meals that could satisfy a broad audience. The filling was creamy but not heavy, striking the perfect balance between richness and lightness. Each sandwich was prepared to order or prepped fresh daily, ensuring the eggs were soft and well seasoned, while the bread remained soft and slightly pillowy, ideal for holding the filling without becoming soggy. It was a testament to practicality, a meal that was simple to make, portable, and comforting. Qualities that resonated with students, office workers, and busy parents alike. For Canadians, the egg salad sandwich became more than a menu item. It was a nostalgic lunchtime companion. There was something reassuring about its predictability, a small pleasure amid the bustle of daily life. Office workers could count on it to pair perfectly with a coffee. Students found it a reliable addition to their lunch boxes, and families appreciated its straightforward taste that appealed to both kids and adults. The sandwich's charm lay in its unpretentious consistency. No gimmicks, no flashy toppings, just honest, creamy egg goodness wrapped in soft bread. As menu trends shifted toward wraps, paninis, and more elaborate sandwiches, the egg salad sandwich quietly faded from most locations. Its disappearance left a small but noticeable void for those who had come to rely on its comforting presence. Today, it lingers in memory as a symbol of a simpler era in Canadian fast food, a reminder that sometimes the most modest options leave the most lasting impression. The egg salad sandwich wasn't about indulgence or flair. It was about dependable flavor, practical satisfaction, and the kind of everyday comfort that makes a menu feel like home. The croissant breakfast sandwich. Long before breakfast sandwiches became a staple of trendy cafes and convenience stores, Tim Hortons quietly introduced a morning favorite that combined indulgence and practicality: the croissant breakfast sandwich. Flaky, buttery croissants cradled savory eggs, crisp bacon or sausage, and just the right amount of cheese. creating a breakfast that felt both comforting and slightly luxurious. It was the kind of sandwich that could elevate an ordinary morning coffee into a satisfying start to the day. Unlike the hurried toast and juice routine, the croissant breakfast sandwich offered a portable, warm, and filling meal. Perfect for busy commuters, students rushing to class, or anyone who needed a quick but hearty breakfast fix. Introduced in the late 1980s, this sandwich reflected Tim Hortons' effort to expand beyond traditional donuts and coffee, appealing to Canadians seeking convenience without compromising taste. The croissant's delicate layers provided a tender, buttery contrast to the savory filling, while the eggs were cooked to a soft, fluffy consistency. Bacon and sausage offered a satisfying saltiness, and a slice of mild cheddar or processed cheese added a creamy finish that tied the flavors together. The sandwich was assembled with care, balancing textures and flavors in a way that felt indulgent but not overdone. It was breakfast made portable, but thoughtful. A far cry from the generic grab-and-go options that dominate today's fast food shelves. For many Canadians, the croissant breakfast sandwich was more than a quick meal. It became a small daily ritual. Office workers grabbed one on the way to early meetings. Parents picked up sandwiches for their kids' school mornings. And students found comfort in a breakfast that could double as a morning study companion. The warm, flaky croissant, combined with the familiar flavors of eggs, cheese, and bacon, evoked a sense of nostalgia for cozy mornings and simple indulgences. Each bite offered a little escape from the routine, a reminder that convenience and comfort could coexist. Over time, the sandwich evolved as Tim Hortons experimented with new fillings, breakfast wraps, and seasonal options. While the original croissant breakfast sandwich gradually disappeared from many menus, its legacy endures in the memories of those who enjoyed it during the golden era of Canadian fast food breakfasts. Today, it remains a symbol of a time when a simple combination of croissant, eggs, and cheese could feel both special and practical. A reminder that sometimes the most satisfying meals are the ones that bring comfort, warmth, and a touch of everyday indulgence, all wrapped in buttery layers. The Maple Cinnamon Bagel. Before every cafe seemed to have a seasonal maple everything menu, Tim Hortons quietly offered a breakfast treat that married the cozy warmth of cinnamon with the rich sweetness of maple syrup. The Maple Cinnamon Bagel. It wasn't flashy or over-decorated, but it had a charm that made it a morning favorite for many Canadians. The bagel itself was soft yet chewy, lightly toasted to create a delicate crust, while the swirls of cinnamon and subtle maple glaze provided a comforting sweetness that didn't overwhelm. It was a bagel that could be enjoyed on the run, paired with coffee, or savored slowly during a quiet morning. Simple, sweet, and distinctly Canadian in its appeal. Introduced in the 1980s, the Maple Cinnamon Bagel reflected Tim Hortons' early experimentation with flavors beyond traditional donuts and muffins. Its preparation was straightforward. A basic bagel dough enriched with swirls of cinnamon sugar, baked to golden perfection, and lightly brushed with a maple-infused glaze, for that signature aroma and flavor. Each bite delivered a satisfying balance of chewy bread and sugary warmth, with maple adding a uniquely Canadian touch that felt both familiar and comforting. Unlike heavily frosted pastries or overly sweet breads, this bagel struck a balance. It was indulgent without being cloying, filling without being heavy, and approachable for both kids and adults alike. For Canadians who remember it, the maple cinnamon bagel was more than a breakfast option. It was a small daily delight. Kids would ask for it after school or on weekend outings, while adults grabbed one with a cup of coffee during hectic mornings. Its subtle sweetness, combined with the comforting aroma of cinnamon and maple, evoked memories of cozy kitchens, crisp autumn mornings, and leisurely breakfasts at the table before the rush of the day began. There was a ritualistic pleasure in peeling apart the soft, warm layers, savoring the gentle sweetness that melted in your mouth. Though it eventually disappeared from most Tim Hortons menus, replaced by bagels with cream cheese, wraps, and trendier seasonal items, the maple cinnamon bagel lives on in memory. It represents a time when a simple combination of familiar flavors could feel special, a breakfast that was both satisfying and heartwarming. For those who remember it, the bagel isn't just a snack. It's a nostalgic reminder of mornings filled with comforting aromas, sweet simplicity, and a little touch of Canadian tradition baked right in. The chocolate glazed Timbits, original recipe. Before gourmet donut holes and fancy mini pastries took over cafe menus, there was a humble Canadian classic that defined snack time for generations: the chocolate glazed Timbits. These little spheres of joy weren't just treats. They were bite-sized symbols of shared moments, quick indulgences, and the unmistakable charm of Tim Hortons in its golden years. Small enough to pop 2 or 3 into your mouth at once, yet large enough to satisfy a sweet craving. The chocolate-glazed Timbits had a perfectly balanced sweetness that paired beautifully with a hot cup of coffee, tea, or even a cold glass of milk. They were the kind of treat that didn't need bells and whistles to feel special. Simplicity was their magic, and chocolate was their universal language. Introduced in the 1970s, Timbits quickly became an iconic fixture of the Tim Hortons menu. The original chocolate glaze was smooth and glossy, not overly sugary, and clung lightly to the tender, airy dough beneath. Each bite offered a delicate snap of glaze, followed by the soft, slightly sweet interior, creating a contrast that was simple but incredibly satisfying. The dough itself was perfectly fried to a golden brown, light enough to feel airy, yet substantial enough to carry the glaze and maintain that comforting chewiness. Unlike elaborate donuts topped with sprinkles or cream, these little spheres were approachable, unpretentious, and endlessly versatile, ideal for a quick snack at work, a lunchbox treat, or a spontaneous indulgence on a rainy afternoon. For Canadians who grew up with them, the chocolate-glazed Timbits were more than just sweet bites. They were a ritual, a tiny celebration wrapped in familiar nostalgia. Office workers would grab a bag during morning coffee breaks. Kids would press their faces against the bakery counter, and families would stock up for weekend breakfasts or after-school snacks. They were small, shareable, and perfectly portioned, making them ideal for moments of communal enjoyment. The repetitive round shape, uniform chocolate coating, and consistent taste reinforced a comforting reliability, a miniature reassurance of predictability and quality that Tim Hortons was known for. Over the decades, while new Timbits flavors emerged and the menu expanded to match changing tastes, the original chocolate glazed Timbits retained a special place in the hearts of those who experienced them during their heyday. They weren't about novelty or complexity. They were about indulgence, accessibility, and a little bit of everyday delight. Though newer generations might gravitate toward trendy flavors or specialty desserts, those who remember the original recipe will tell you it had a perfect simplicity, a balance of chocolate and dough, sweetness and airiness, tradition and comfort. Today, the chocolate glazed Timbits original recipe endures in memory as a quintessential Canadian treat, emblematic of a time when small pleasures mattered, shared moments counted, and a simple chocolate glaze could make any day feel a little brighter. For many, they're a nostalgic taste of home, community, and the sweet, comforting consistency of Tim Hortons in its classic era. The Mixed Berry Crumble Muffin. Before muffins became the Instagram-perfect, ultra-decorated treats we see today, Tim Hortons quietly served up a humble, homey classic that Canadians fell in love with: the Mixed Berry Crumble Muffin. It was a breakfast option that managed to feel indulgent without ever being over the top. Each muffin was a small golden bundle of soft, tender crumb, dotted generously with bursts of tart blueberries, sweet raspberries, and occasionally hints of blackberries, all crowned with a delicate crumble topping that added a touch of crunch. Unlike flashy pastries that competed for attention with icing and sprinkles, the Mixed Berry Crumble Muffin offered a comforting balance of fruit, texture, and sweetness. A morning treat that felt wholesome and approachable at once. Introduced in the late 1980s, this muffin reflected Tim Hortons' quiet dedication to offering more than just donuts and coffee. The base was simple: a soft, lightly sweetened batter designed to highlight the natural flavors of the berries without overwhelming them. The crumble topping, a mix of sugar, butter, and flour, added both visual appeal and textural contrast, making every bite a satisfying combination of soft and crisp. What set the muffin apart was its generosity. Berries weren't sparingly sprinkled, but incorporated in a way that ensured a fruity punch in almost every mouthful. It was a simple construction, but one that made a significant impression on anyone who appreciated straightforward, well-executed pastries. For many Canadians, the Mixed Berry Crumble Muffin was a quiet companion to busy mornings. Students grabbed it with a cup of coffee before heading to class. Office workers reached for it as a mid-morning snack, and parents enjoyed it during rushed breakfast routines. There was a sense of comfort in its consistency. The golden dome, the crumble's light crunch, the pockets of juicy berries, all promised a familiar taste that required no effort to enjoy. It bridged the gap between homemade baking and convenient fast food, offering a sense of warmth and care even in a grab-and-go environment. As the years went on and Tim Hortons expanded its menu with newer flavors, smoothies, and seasonal treats, The mixed berry crumble muffin gradually faded from many locations. Yet for those who remember it, it remains a symbol of simple pleasure. An uncomplicated, fruit-filled muffin that made mornings brighter and snacks sweeter. Its charm lay not in gimmicks, but in its reliability, balance, and ability to make the ordinary feel special. Today, the mixed berry crumble muffin lingers in memory as a nostalgic classic, a quiet reminder of a time when breakfast treats were made to comfort, nourish, and satisfy without the need for flashy presentations. It represents the kind of food that feels familiar, dependable, and just a little bit indulgent. A muffin that made each bite feel like a small, sweet reward in the midst of everyday life. The chocolate eclair donut. Long before artisanal bakeries and fancy coffee shops began stuffing pastries with exotic creams and glazes, Tim Hortons offered a classic that combined elegance and indulgence in a humble paper bag. The chocolate eclair donut. It was the crown jewel of the display case. A treat that felt just a touch sophisticated without ever being pretentious. Long, glossy, and filled with cool vanilla custard, the eclair was the kind of donut that made a routine coffee feel like a little celebration. It was dessert disguised as a quick snack. A hint of Parisian charm nestled between familiar Canadian coffee rituals. At first glance, the eclair looked deceptively simple. A soft, elongated shoe-style dough topped with a smooth layer of chocolate glaze. But the true magic was in the filling. Thick, silky vanilla custard oozed with the first bite, striking the perfect balance between richness and sweetness. It wasn't whipped cream, it wasn't pudding, it was indulgent yet comforting, the kind of custard that clung to your spoon and lingered with every mouthful. Paired with the bittersweet chocolate top, it created a dynamic duo of textures and flavors, elevating the everyday coffee break into a moment of quiet indulgence. During the 1980s and 1990s, the chocolate eclair had a presence that was hard to ignore. Kids eyed it as the fancy donut, a treat reserved for special mornings or small victories, while adults appreciated the nostalgia it carried. The way it reminded them of old bakery counters filled with glass cases of cream-filled delights. It was indulgent, yes, but also comforting, a bridge between European pastry tradition and Canadian fast food familiarity. Each eclair promised consistency, a sweet escape that was both familiar and a little sophisticated. Over time, however, the eclair quietly disappeared from most Tim Hortons locations. Maybe it was too delicate for the grab-and-go model. Maybe it didn't fit the evolving menu trends. Or perhaps it belonged to a slower, more deliberate era of coffee breaks. Whatever the reason, its absence left a small void in the lineup. A little less custard, a little less elegance behind the counter. Today, the chocolate eclair donut survives in memory as one of the most refined pastries ever to grace a Tim Hortons box. It was smooth, rich, and just indulgent enough to make you pause, take a bite, and appreciate the simple luxury of a perfectly executed dessert. In its absence, it remains a nostalgic reminder that even in the fast food world, a little sophistication can go a long way. The caramel apple muffin. Long before pumpkin spice lattes ruled autumn menus, There was a quiet seasonal star at Tim Hortons, the caramel apple muffin. It wasn't flashy, it didn't boast over-the-top toppings or Instagram-ready swirls, yet it quietly won hearts with its sweet and tart charm. Soft, tender, and generously studded with small chunks of apple, it carried a subtle warmth from gentle spices like cinnamon and nutmeg. A delicate drizzle of golden caramel on top hinted at indulgence without ever going overboard, creating a balance that made each bite comforting, familiar, and just a little special. The muffin managed to capture the feeling of a cozy kitchen on a crisp fall morning, where the smell of baking apples mingled with the sweetness of caramel and the quiet hum of family life. Introduced in the mid-1980s, the caramel apple muffin reflected Tim Hortons' approach to seasonal treats. Simple, approachable, and rooted in recognizable flavors. The apples were carefully folded into the batter, ensuring that every bite offered genuine fruitiness without becoming soggy or overpowering. The caramel topping added a gentle sweetness, complementing the natural tang of the apples and the warmth of the spices. The muffin's exterior was lightly golden, providing a subtle crispness that contrasted with the moist, tender interior. Its appeal was in its balance: approachable, satisfying, and endlessly snackable, making it a favorite for both adults and children alike. For Canadians, the caramel apple muffin evoked nostalgia and comfort. Children tugged at their parents' sleeves in the display line, eager for a taste, while adults relished the quiet pleasure of a seasonal indulgence alongside a cup of coffee. It was the kind of treat that reminded people of autumn traditions. Apple picking trips, school lunches packed with care, or weekend mornings spent at the kitchen table. Eating it was a small ritual. Break off a piece, savor the tender crumb, and let the sweet buttery caramel linger on the tongue. The muffin wasn't just a snack. It was a connection to home, memory, and the gentle rhythms of the season. By the late 1990s, the caramel apple muffin quietly disappeared from the menu, eventually overshadowed by pumpkin-flavored items and more indulgent modern pastries. Yet its legacy remains vivid in the memories of those who anticipated the seasonal return of its warm, comforting flavors. Today, it stands as a nostalgic classic, simple, delicious, and quietly perfect in its balance of fruit, spice, and caramel. A reminder that sometimes the most memorable treats are those that celebrate gentle pleasures rather than flashy trends. The ginger molasses cookie. It wasn't just another sweet treat. It was a chewy, spice square of comfort that evoked crisp autumn afternoons, cozy winter evenings, and the soft glow of kitchens alive with the scent of baking. The rich aroma of molasses blended seamlessly with zesty ginger, a touch of cinnamon, and a hint of clove, pulling people back to simpler times where the rhythm of the day was marked by the smell of home-baked delights. Unlike the flashier, trendier cookies of later decades, this cookie offered a sense of grounded familiarity, a sweet pause in the middle of a busy day. Introduced in the 1980s, the ginger molasses cookie was Tim Hortons' nod to traditional, approachable comfort baking. Its texture struck a perfect balance: edges slightly crisp, center soft and chewy, while the deep, earthy sweetness of molasses paired beautifully with the gentle spice of ginger. It was a cookie that didn't scream for attention, but once tasted, lingered in memory. Its flavor profile was subtle yet memorable, invoking the warmth of family kitchens, school bake sales, and holiday gatherings. This cookie had personality without pretense, a small indulgence that felt homemade, even in a fast food setting. For Canadians, the ginger molasses cookie became more than a snack. It became a ritual. Office workers would pair it with a morning coffee for a gentle spiced pick-me-up, while students often tucked it into lunch boxes for a sweet midday boost. Families might pick up a few on the way home, sharing them with kids, or enjoying one alongside a warm cup of tea after a busy day. It offered consistency and comfort, a dependable companion in the same way a favorite sweater or well-worn cookbook does. Its charm lay in its simplicity, in the quiet joy of flavors that didn't need to shout. As the 1990s rolled in, the cookie slowly disappeared from Tim Hortons' lineup, replaced by more elaborate, trend-driven pastries. Yet for those who remember it, the ginger molasses cookie remains an icon of understated sweetness and seasonal warmth. Its chewy texture, rich molasses flavor, and gentle spice continue to evoke a nostalgia for a slower, more intentional era of baked goods. In every bite, it captured the essence of comfort, tradition, and the quiet magic of simple pleasures. A timeless reminder that sometimes the most enduring treats are the ones that taste like home. The tuna sandwich. In the history of Tim Hortons, the tuna sandwich stands out as a surprisingly enduring symbol of practical, everyday comfort. Unlike the sweet pastries or coffee accompaniments that often dominate memories of the brand, this sandwich offered a straightforward, hearty lunch option that appealed to Canadians seeking something reliable and satisfying. Its charm lay in simplicity. Flaked tuna mixed with a creamy, lightly seasoned dressing, tucked neatly between two slices of soft white bread. It was the kind of sandwich you could grab on the go, yet it carried a quiet, homey comfort, evoking the flavor of a lunch prepared with care rather than for show. First appearing in the 1980s, the tuna sandwich reflected an era when fast food was beginning to expand, but still retained a sense of freshly made convenience. The filling was rich without being heavy, balanced by a subtle tang from pickle relish or a hint of lemon, and occasionally complemented by crisp lettuce that added texture and freshness. Each bite offered a predictable, satisfying combination of creamy tuna and tender bread, a reassuring option in a world of increasingly flashy, pre-packaged sandwiches. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't indulgent, but it was dependable. A midday staple Canadians could count on to fill their bellies without fuss. For many, the tuna sandwich became a quiet comfort in the daily routine. Office workers grabbed it alongside a morning coffee for a reliable lunch. Students packed it into lunchboxes for a quick bite between classes, and parents appreciated its ease and satisfying simplicity. There was a subtle reassurance in the familiar white paper wrapper, signaling a wholesome, straightforward meal that didn't need embellishment. In its consistency, It reminded people of homemade lunches and simple cafe offerings, bridging the gap between convenience and care. Over time, the tuna sandwich gradually faded from the Tim Hortons menu, replaced by wraps, specialty sandwiches, and more contemporary lunch options. Yet it remains a vivid memory for those who grew up with it. Its soft bread, creamy filling, and understated flavor continue to evoke nostalgia for a simpler time, when fast food could be comforting without being complicated. The tuna sandwich may no longer be found behind the counter, but in the collective memory of Canadians, it remains a small emblem of practicality, homey satisfaction, and the quiet joys of a lunchtime classic. The Yogurt and Berries Parfait. Long before Instagram-worthy smoothie bowls and fancy cafe parfaits became a staple of Canadian mornings, Tim Hortons quietly offered a breakfast option that balanced health and indulgence: the Yogurt and Berries Parfait. It was a layered treat, visually striking with creamy yogurt nestled beneath vibrant strawberries, blueberries, and raspberries, and topped with a sprinkling of crunchy granola. Unlike the sugary, buttery pastries that tempted with immediate gratification, the parfait promised a lighter, fresher start to the day, while still feeling like a small indulgence. It was the kind of choice that made you feel just a touch virtuous, while still satisfying the sweet tooth that lurked in every Canadian morning. Introduced in the late 1990s, the Yogurt and Berries Parfait was part of Tim Hortons' early efforts to appeal to health-conscious customers without abandoning their signature convenience. The yogurt, often creamy vanilla or low-fat, provided a smooth, satisfying base, while the berries, whether fresh or frozen, offered bursts of natural tartness and color. A layer of granola added texture and crunch, giving the parfait substance and making it feel more like a proper breakfast than a snack. Its appeal lay in simplicity. Each spoonful delivered a balanced mix of creamy, fruity, and crunchy sensations that delighted the palate without overwhelming it. For many Canadians, the parfait became a reliable and comforting morning ritual. Students rushing to class, office workers grabbing breakfast on the go, and parents sneaking in a wholesome bite before school drop-offs all found solace in its consistency. The portioned layers carried a quiet charm, a visual promise of freshness, care, and quality. It bridged the gap between wholesome home-prepared breakfasts and the fast-paced convenience of a quick-service restaurant, offering both satisfaction and a sense of balance. Though the Yogurt and Berries Parfait eventually disappeared from the core menu, replaced by smoothies and trendier breakfast items, it remains fondly remembered. It captures a moment in time when Tim Hortons experimented with lighter, colorful options, giving Canadians a refreshing alternative to their usual morning fare. For those who recall it, each spoonful evokes a simple, satisfying ritual, a touch of sweetness, a bit of indulgence, and a moment of calm before the day took over. In memory, the Yogurt and Berries Parfait stands as a small, thoughtful pleasure. A taste of freshness, balance, and the comforting rhythm of Canadian mornings. And there you have it, 21 vanished Tim Hortons items that only true Canadians remember. From sweet treats to hearty sandwiches, each one tells a story of mornings, snacks, and memories long past. Which of these classics do you remember best, or wish would make a comeback? Drop a comment below, share this video with fellow nostalgic coffee lovers, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more trips down memory lane.